I said, my gosh, they've got nothing but money for lights and Technicolor.
I don't think there was anything more beautiful on the screen than a close-up of a beautiful actress in Technicolor.
The rainbow arrived on the silver screen thanks to a man named Herbert Kalmus, who preferred the masters to motion pictures. A man whose ex-wife received the credit he shunned but richly deserved. The Technicolor story is a human drama. Its backdrop, the most beautiful films ever made.
You haven't seen color till you see Technicolor. It was like a painting.
The great masters understood color. They understood the interplay of shadow and light.
I think sometimes darkness is more beautiful than light. As a matter of fact, of the great masters, painters, like Rembrandt, he specialized in use as little light as possible.
Most people's eyes are different in shape anyway. You know, this eye is usually quite different to the other eye. Someone who's learning about drawing or painting and he gets everything exactly right, there's something wrong about the drawing. It hasn't got soul because it all looks too perfect, you know, and that's the same thing with faces, color.
Sir Isaac Newton gave a scientific explanation to what all great artists knew intuitively. That pure white light contains all the colors of the spectrum.
Into light I discovered there was red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. And all together were white light. So from black to white, there were all these stages. Each one has his own meaning, each one has his own specific reason to be there.
In 1855, less than 2 decades after Louis Daguerre developed the first photographs, physicist James Maxwell employed Newtonian science to add color. He took 3 pictures of fruit, one each through green, red, and blue filters, then projected lantern slide images of the 3 on top of each other, rebuilding much of the original colors. At Thomas Edison's first public showing of motion pictures for a fee, customers saw strongman Eugene Sandow flex and Annabelle do her serpentine dance. Both films were originally hand-painted, frame by frame, color that faded away long ago. This restored clip of a film by George Méliès shows how vivid hand-colored images looked. Actress Lillian Russell startled the world appearing in the first photographic color process, Kinemacolor. It required special equipment, cost a fortune, and gave many people headaches. Engraver Max Hanschegel took the principles of his trade and color-tinted scenes in a handful of films, including The Burning of Atlanta for D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation. But these early efforts were no more than mediocre novelties. Acceptable and affordable color would come thanks to a chemical engineer from Boston who didn't think much of motion pictures. When a baseball collided with the finger of young Herbert T. Kalmus, his father's dream that he become a concert pianist ended. When both parents died by the time he was 11, Herbert's chance at a normal New England childhood ended too. He worked in a Boston chocolate factory and paid his way to study physics and chemistry at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology.
He had this, wasn't such a deep voice, but it was a penetrating voice. And these eyes that just latched onto you.
At a school dance, Herbert's eyes latched on to catalog model Natalie Dunphy. She was brash, opinionated, and 4 years his senior. They married before Herbert's 1904 graduation. Kalmus became a professor at MIT and formed a research firm that invented such gizmos as a flash frame camera to compute the speed of a moving automobile. One day, an investor asked the Kalmus firm to perfect the projection of motion pictures. Kalmus, fascinated by a bigger challenge, suggested the money go to develop a color film process. Remarkable because Kalmus found the new medium only mildly amusing.
He wouldn't have said this is the American art form. He would not have thought that. He liked the old masters. He liked classical music. And that was his idea of art.
Adapting the name of his college yearbook, Kalmus formed the Technicolor Motion Picture Corporation. His first headquarters and lab was a railway car, which he rode to Florida to shoot the first Technicolor film. Only a single frame exists of The Gulf Between, which required the dual lens projection of color-filtered film. Kalmus himself said any operator had to be part college professor, part acrobat. In early 1920, he brought a new process and an appeal for money to the founder of Kodak. George Eastman said no.
He was so depressed, and yet this was probably the beginning of a great crossroads in film technology, where Kodak went one way and Technicolor went another way.
Dr. Kalmus somehow convinced the makers of Bon Ami cleanser to give him the money, and producer Joseph Schenck to give him a star and a staff at no charge. He and Natalie left for the coast.
He didn't really like Hollywood. In fact, he didn't like California. He called it a goddamn burned-up desert. He remained a New Englander.
During production, star Anna May Wong said, "This picture will never reach the screen." Based on the story of Madame Butterfly, the film demonstrated a new process where two dyed strips of film were cemented together.
The Technicolor camera photographed the original scene through a red filter and a green filter on black and white film. And actually, color wasn't really added back into the image until the final printing process, when the images were dyed red and green and combined to form an approximation of natural color.
During production on The Toll of the Sea, Dr. Kalmus secretly divorced Natalie, citing irreconcilable differences. As part of the agreement, she became integral to the company, running Technicolor's color advisory service.
And she became a very powerful woman in Hollywood. She had attended art schools in Boston, in Europe, and she had a great color sense, but that color sense didn't always agree with the art directors at the different studios.
Although they never spoke, the doctor and his ex-wife continued to share homes on both coasts. She insisted on being called Mrs. Kalmus and spent 35 years taking the doctor to court in an attempt to nullify the divorce. The novelty of color made The Toll of the Sea a box office success, but the process was costly, and Dr. Kalmus knew for Technicolor to succeed, he needed the endorsement of a bigger star than Anna May Wong. Douglas Fairbanks became a legend by never sitting still. But the one role that eluded him was a Treasure Island-style pirate as depicted by artist Howard Pyle. Inspired by these drawings, Fairbanks told Dr. Kalmus he'd spend $1 million of his own money to make a Technicolor feature. Fairbanks spent 4 months shooting color tests until he found an acceptable saturation level.
He was more concerned about the background and the trees and sky and things rather than what the faces looked like. He even told Dr. Kalmus, oh, flesh tones aren't important.
The New York Times called the film a glorious chromatic production, reminiscent of the paintings of the old masters. The New York premiere had expert Technicolor projectionists, ensuring the bonded red and green sensitive film strips didn't cause problems. But across the country, untrained operators were screening the double-thick prints.
After they were glued together and dyed on either side, they warped, cupped, and they scratched because they were so thick. There was a lot of trouble, and they had to replace those.
Color remained an impractical and expensive gimmick at a time when black and white photography had evolved into a respected art form. Many directors saw color as a creative step backward.
Sammy! Don't you know me? It's your little baby. I'd walk a million miles for one of your smiles.
The jazz singer created an instant sensation, but many filmmakers found talking pictures vulgar compared to the lyrical simplicity of silent film. Riding his studio's financial success with talkies, Jack Warner cast about for another novelty to bring in the audience. The screening problems with The Black Pirate had forced Technicolor to develop a new process. This time, 2 dyed strips of film were superimposed or transferred onto a single piece of film. The technology had improved, but the quality of movies being made only seemed worse.
When color arrived, everyone was scared that if it was in shadows, the color was not right. So the expression of the cinematography through the language of light and shadow stopped once again. Everything was light.
Check your husband. Do not crowd the aisle. He's on your neck.
MGM had a contract with Technicolor, but Louis B. Mayer had so little faith in the process, he relegated the novelty to short subjects or brief inserts. Like this performance of Romeo and Juliet featuring Norma Shearer and John Gilbert, whose career ended with talking pictures.
By yonder blessed moon, I swear, which tips with silver all these fruit tree tops.
Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere.
Why, you don't mean the ride of Paul Revere. Yes, I mean the ride of Paul Revere.
Other curiosities include Porky Pig's 2-color screen debut and a rare 2-color appearance by the Three Stooges. Also Laurel and Hardy and the Marx Brothers, shot during a rehearsal on the set of their classic Animal Crackers.
These pancakes with that old southern flavor. To make them, just add milk or water to this famous flour. It's easy and delicious.
A few advertisers ran 2-color spots in theaters, but Technicolor remained an imperfect and expensive process. Dr. Kalmus knew he had to bring the entire rainbow to the screen before his 16-year experiment would be a success. In 1932, Dr. Kalmus announced completion of a camera capable of shooting all-color motion pictures. Studios, chafing from past failures, greeted the news with a collective yawn. Dr. Kalmus settled on a less ambitious approach. Kalmus offered his 3-color technology to the animation world, but was told black and white cartoons made money without the added expense. Independent producer Walt Disney had never used the 2-color process, but when Dr. Kalmus showed him a 3-color test, Disney scrapped the black and white footage he'd already shot on a cartoon called Flowers and Trees. Impresario Sid Grauman agreed to run the cartoon at his Chinese theater prior to the feature Strange Interlude.
The people loved the cartoon. That was the thing they really applauded, not the black and white feature. So that made a big impression, 3-color, for the first time.
The new Technicolor camera ran 3 strips of black and white film simultaneously, one sensitive to red light, one to green, another to blue. Each of the 3 strips is washed in a complementary color, and then all 3 are superimposed or transferred to a single piece of film.
We build colors as we go at the very last minute, which is the only way you can really get true color. We also have the ability to control the contrast, which is so important in photography.
From the beginning, Technicolor controlled its process and cameras like a mother hen.
You didn't buy them, you rented them, and with them you had to take the camera assistants, and Technicolor supplied the film.
Starting in the mid-30s, it was mandatory, it was part of the contract, that if somebody rented a Technicolor camera to use in their film, they had to take Natalie Kalmus.
Natalie Kalmus believed natural, muted colors did not tax the eye as much as bright, man-made colors. Walt Disney initially agreed that audiences might not accept florid colors for 2 hours, so his first feature reflects a more subdued palette. Three years later, Disney allowed his imagination to override Natalie Kalmus. Fantasia celebrates the full spectrum of color and showcases the flexibility of the Technicolor process.
I like to think of dye transfer as like making a beautiful painting. You're actually creating the color. And that's why the colors are so true.
Even when Walt Disney decided to go color with Dr. Kalmus, his brother Roy objected to it. He wanted to stay with black and white. It's very good that they didn't.
He was a king and a god in the world he knew.
Two months after he unleashed King Kong on the world, producer Marion C. Cooper took on color by forming Pioneer Pictures with financier Jock Whitney. Less than a year later, they released the first live-action, all-color film.
You ruined me, cucaracha. I'm going to kill you.
Technicolor was the real star of an otherwise dumb film. As a critic wrote, producers may mishandle their medium, but at least they will have good colors, well focused to abuse.
Here is the screen as you now know it in its customary shades of black and white. Here it is, butted with the rich reality of natural color.
Becky Sharp director Ruben Mamoulian warned, "We must not let our enthusiasm for color overbalance what we have already learned about film craftsmanship." Natalie Kalmus was also vigilant.
She had made up a scrapbook for each film. Each scene of the film would have a different page with the fabrics on it, the wall coverings, costumes, everything. They then shot that on film to see how the colors would play against each other.
Some critics came down hard on Becky Sharp. One writing, "There is no sex appeal in a gal who appears to be in the last stages of scarlet fever. The actors all look like roasted turkeys." Becky Sharp was finally judged a failure, and the jury remained out on Technicolor.
People used to be unnecessarily prejudiced about colour in the sense that they said it was unnatural. And it was simply that they weren't trained to observe colour.
See that little yellow spot on its leg? Well, if you touch it, you know what'll happen?
No, I give up. What?
Its leg will pop off.
The Trail of the Lonesome Pine was the first all-color moneymaker. Some believed the film improved the case for color by lessening its importance, but the industry remained split on Technicolor's artistic and commercial value. It would take one maverick filmmaker to remove all lingering doubt.
What are you driving at?
Actresses who became stars in black and white were often leery about appearing in color. They felt it had none of the mystery and allure created by the interplay of shadow and light. Carole Lombard, never one to mince words, called color motion pictures screwy. Bette Davis labeled color garish tripe.
What do you think of it, honey?
It's lovely. It's beautiful. But it could have been even better with
your close-up.
If a black and white star did appear in color, it was often just for a moment. MGM shot none of the women's leading ladies in color, only the models in a brief fashion show sequence. Still doubtful of the Technicolor process, the studio played it safe, shooting the fashion show also in black and white. Independent producer David O. Selznick rarely played it safe. In 1936, he partnered with financier Jock Whitney, who had recently dissolved Pioneer Pictures.
Every single film that Selznick International was considering from 1936 on, I'm sure Jock was saying, David, what about, can we do this one in color? Can we do this one in color?
Is your spirit in prison? If it is, let me help you free it.
To sell the public on Technicolor, Selznick believed he needed major stars. Meryl Oberon looked spectacular, but in 1936, a big star she wasn't. The casting of Marlene Dietrich generated its own heat. The goddess of black and white, looking so good, convinced other actresses not to be so afraid of Technicolor. The act of shooting, however, remained an adventure. Actors stood under wilting lights as technicians held up a color chart nicknamed the Lily, used to properly balance the three-strip camera.
Like whenever they got through with a good scene, one of the assistant cameramen, like the slate boy guy, he would hold up a color sign and say, "That was a lily." And I didn't know what that meant, so evidently that must have been terrific because that was their expression that the color was good.
With Garden of Allah, David Selznick had scored a critical and commercial triumph. The film more than made back the added expense of Technicolor. When a tall actress from Sweden arrived in Hollywood, Selznick shot her first screen test for a picture called Intermezzo. But Ingrid Bergman did not appear in a color film until 5 years after this test.
Ironically, he didn't make Intermezzo in color. He ended up making Intermezzo in black and white. So it was a economic thing because it was very expensive in the beginning to make films in color.
With A Star is Born, Selznick's second hit in 1937, The major studios began to look at Technicolor as not an expensive novelty, but good box office. The Adventures of Robin Hood was the top-grossing film of 1938. Illustrations by artist N.C. Wyeth inspired cameramen Sol Polito and Tony Gordio. They somehow convinced Natalie Kalmus to relax her opposition to bright colors on the screen.
That light or that color that is reflected from the screen arriving on you is change your metabolism, is change your blood pressure. Is, in other words, it gives you an emotion.
Are you with me?
By 1938, Technicolor had 25 feature films in release. The company turned a sizable profit for the first time in its 23-year history. Competing systems emerged, but quickly disappeared due to the superiority of Technicolor. Of the major studio chiefs, Louis B. Mayer remained most skeptical about Technicolor. Instead of feature-length films, he produced short subjects. Shooting these travelogues on location gave photographer Jack Cardiff freedom to experiment with the Technicolor camera. Cardiff could observe and shoot with his painter's eye.
People, if they're sitting on a lawn, they get green reflections from the grass. It's a natural thing, but the average person wouldn't realize it. He wouldn't notice it. So color, when they saw it on the screen, they said, oh, it's so exaggerated, but it wasn't at all.
MGM also released a series of short subject color films, showcasing its stars and its stars of the future. 1 year after La Cucaracha made Technicolor history, 13-year-old Judy Garland sang the song, then signed a studio contract.
La cucaracha, ya no puede caminar, porque le tiene, porque le posa.
Her next color appearance would be in a Technicolor masterpiece. The Wizard of Oz was not a full-length color film. Its opening and closing scenes appeared in sepia or black and white film washed in a brown bath. This made Dorothy's Technicolor arrival to the land of Oz all the more astonishing.
When it came from black and white to color, you know, when it opened it up and it showed Munchkin and I said, God, I was like everybody else. Oh, look at that, you know, gosh, you know.
Toto, I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
The production was a masterpiece of design, with color the featured star.
It was exciting because they worried about everything. They worried about every flower pot. They even had a pond where they had to put in bluing to get the right color.
To find the proper color for the yellow brick road, art director Cedric Gibbons tried imported paints and exotic dyes, but he discovered cheap fence paint from the local hardware store looked best in Technicolor.
I've never seen a horse like that before.
No, and never will again, I fancy. There's only one of him in Egypt. He's the horse of a different colour you've heard tell about.
Animal cruelty protectors said no to using real paint on the horse. The solution? A paste of water mixed with fruit-flavored Jell-O powders. Constant licking made touch-ups a necessity.
First we visit the land of Oz, and because The Wizard of Oz is being filmed entirely in Technicolor, actually billions of candle power are being poured onto this set, enough to light a fair-sized city.
So they had to use all arc lights, and believe me, it was a blaze to work. And in the summertime, working on any Technicolor picture was murder.
On-set temperatures of 100 degrees were not uncommon. Cowardly Lion Bert Lahr received special water breaks to replenish fluids lost to perspiration. Miraculously, none of the intense suffering ever appears on screen. For its next big production, Technicolor found a way to cool things off.
How do I look?
Awful. Just awful.
Why, what's the matter?
The tortured production of Gone with the Wind at least had no Wizard of Oz heat problems. Director Victor Fleming, who went straight from Oz to Tara, shot using a higher speed film, one that reduced lighting requirements by half and allowed a more natural look on screen. For the role of Scarlett O'Hara, producer David Selznick knew he needed an actress who looked stunning in color.
Vivien Leigh had only been seen in black and white British films. And he made these color tests of Vivien Leigh that I think are a revelation. Color reveals the complexion of her skin, the color of her eyes. You see what a ravishing beauty she was.
I never want you to be anything but completely happy.
But Ashley Wilkes was described by Margaret Mitchell as having a kind of golden hair. So Leslie Howard sat still for weeks on end until my father found the right kind of gold hair that wouldn't look phony, but looked like Leslie Howard's real hair.
Selznick seemed less color sensitive about Rhett and Scarlett's daughter, Bonnie Blue Butler.
They say that when Victor Fleming took a good look at me, he said, well, first they give me a British Scarlett, then they give me a 40-year-old Ashley Wilkes, and now, by God, I've got a brown-eyed Bonnie Blue Butler. And Selznick said that if they just dressed me in blue and lit me a certain way, nobody would notice that I didn't have blue eyes.
Natalie Kalmus was around constantly. She was apparently in everybody's hair, much more than anybody wanted her to be, but she was so protective of the process.
Imagine defying those tycoons of the third floor and saying, you can't see the film till I correct it. I mean, that took some guts.
The growing tension between Natalie and studio filmmakers boiled over on Gone with the Wind. Her undoing was the color of the walls in this brief scene. She felt the actors' costumes wouldn't stand out enough. Tests proved her wrong, but Natalie kept fighting. Selznick contacted Dr. Kalmus, who had his ex-wife removed to Technicolor's plant in England.
He wanted to get away from us, so he sent her over here, and she became color consultant over here. And she was renowned for these ghastly hats she used to wear. They really were absolutely ghastly. Every color of the spectrum they were. She thought she was promoting color. We all thought she was doing color a lot of harm.
So-called Gone with the Wind experts say colors in the second half of the film are brighter due to the absence of Natalie Kalmus. But that discounts the overriding vision of art director William Cameron Menzies, who used color to set the mood and tone of each scene. He later wrote, when unpleasant colors were required to enhance the drama, they were used. The changing colors of daylight were studied more than ever before.
You know, the main problem of school today, still today, they are not really teaching you the background of what color means. They never tell you about the philosophy.
Who will win the Academy Awards? The tension grows and grows. Little else is thought of, little else discussed. To William Cameron Menzies for his outstanding use of color in Gone with the Wind. To Dr. Herbert T. Kalmus, president of Technicolor, a special Oscar for color development.
The father of Technicolor, who disdained awards in Hollywood, actually hired a publicist to keep his name out of the press.
just plain, ordinary sailors picking the queen of the ship.
During the dark years of World War II, GIs took comfort in images from home. The combination of beautiful girls and Technicolor proved unbeatable.
If I could meet a girl as sweet, I'd simply claim her and name her my queen.
Wartime pinup Betty Grable made 27 black and white films before Technicolor made her a star. Maureen O'Hara became one of many actresses to be dubbed Queen of Technicolor.
I trust my appearance pleases you.
Lucille Ball walked in and out of 30 black and white films before Technicolor showcased her new red hair, whipping her career into shape. Carmen Miranda's 3 black and white films bombed at the box office. Technicolor, a winning personality, and fruit made her a star.
I love you so much, I can't conceal it. I love you so much, it's a wonder you don't feel it.
An MGM publicist labeled Arlene Dahl the girl for whom Technicolor was invented.
Over a period of time after making films in Technicolor, my eyes became so injured from those hot lights that I have to wear, to this day, I have to wear dark glasses in the sunlight. People think it's an affectation. It's not. I really have to protect my eyes.
Underdog studio Universal, boasting no stable of real stars, employed Technicolor to invent one.
Starring the Queen of Technicolor, Maria Montez.
During the 40s, Maria Montez made the same film 6 times, and every one was a moneymaker.
Montez, Queen of Technicolor. Twice as lovely, twice as exciting, venomous in hate, rapturous in love. A more daring John Hall, Sabu. Dashing John Hall, a rascally Sabu. John Hall at his dynamic best, Shem Howard. And Coco.
In wartime Hollywood, no studio embraced Technicolor more than 20th Century Fox, and no director more than the wildly imaginative Busby Berkeley. His finale to The Gang's All Here shows off Technicolor at its psychedelic zenith.
The one drug I knew that Busby took regularly was his martini at the end of the day, because that was prominent in his hand when they said it's a wrap. Those martinis were lethal.
Tell those reporters to come up. I'll give them a story.
No Technicolor star worked harder than Esther Williams. In 10 years, she appeared in 16 extravaganzas, becoming MGM's top-grossing actress of all time.
Underwater, we had problems getting a good color because, you know, the water filters out the reds. And so you get a pretty pale skin color.
I got lucky. I had skin that was heavy enough so that you could tan, and I could always be the same color, because the truth is, Bill Tuttle, your makeup didn't stay on. What the water did is wash it off.
Many actors bristled at Technicolor special requirements, like standing around while the lily was brought in to balance the camera.
I many times thought, what is Lana Turner doing right now while I'm holding this damn lily? I know what she was holding.
9 years after The Gang's All Here, Busby Berkeley pulled off another Technicolor spectacular with $1 Million Mermaid.
Here before I smash this bottle on that ugly, sneaking face of yours. Get out!
Not everyone who excelled in black and white production considered color an artistic step backward. Clarence Brown, who directed Crawford and Garbo in some of their finest work, and Charles Rocha, who shot Mary Pickford's biggest films, combined their talents to create a Technicolor masterpiece. Director Brown, wanting to depict a real family's fight for survival in the Florida wilderness, decided no actor would wear makeup. Cameraman Rocha later said, "I had an inkling of the difficulty involved, but I had always wanted to show skin color and texture as they really are." Off camera, young Claude Jarman Jr. wore a straw hat to keep his delicate skin from tanning. Gregory Peck's ruddy complexion was treated with ice to hold the redness down. And Jane Wyman, who had very fair skin, spent 15 minutes each day under a sun lamp to achieve a believable outdoors look. Black and white veterans Clarence Brown and Charles Rocha knew what they were doing. The yearling won a 1946 Academy Award for Best Color Cinematography. Writer-director John Huston became a star working in black and white, but he embraced the creative potential of color. Shooting in Africa with a lumbering 3-strip camera was compounded by one brave actress suffering from dysentery.
She had a bucket by the side just out of shot. In between takes, she'd be vomiting in the bucket. And I was worried because her face was getting quite green, which even Technicolor would have a job with at that time.
John Huston had a talent for painting and a passion for art. In 1952, he and cinematographer Ozzie Morris set out to capture the look and spirit of artist Toulouse-Lautrec. Huston and Morris wanted muted pastels, not florid colors. When John arranged a test screening for Technicolor executives, they became outraged.
And he turned to me and he said, "What do you think, Oz?" So I said, "Well, John, I think we're doing the right sort of thing." He said, "So do I." So he said, "Gentlemen, f*** you," and we walked out.
For their production of Moby Dick, Huston and Morris wanted the stark look of 19th century etchings. This time, Technicolor fully cooperated.
I went to the London plant when Moby Dick came out. They wanted the colors more depressing than Technicolor did it. We made it more depressing. The people who make the pictures, the more they understand about the power of the Technicolor system, the more they can get what they want, the more expressive they can be.
perhaps no one understood the interplay of shadow and light, color and movement better than director and painter Vincent Minnelli. Because he shot his greatest works on a studio set. He conjured his visions with absolute control.
Every moment was thinking another vision through again and making an idea. Even in the quiet dinners together, he would always be thinking. But he had an enormous eye for the beauty and excitement of color, everything. The terrific force, I think. And I think he lasts very well, don't you?
And he always had a picture with him. He used to cut up more art books. It was a crime what he did to art books. He cut all this and pasted them all over his office walls. Anything to do with what he had planned to do, you see.
Of course, you notice right away a difference in the lighting, the use of shadows, and a much more artistic approach to the way the film looks.
Minnelli was something. He was born for that, you know what I mean? I couldn't even explain. How is an artist born? What makes an artist great? Well, he was one of them.
Since 1936, Technicolor had maintained a plant just outside of London. Beginning in the war years, the Archers, under director Michael Powell and producer Emmerich Pressburger, engaged in what Martin Scorsese called the most subversive period of filmmaking at a major studio in history. Powell credited his visual sense to avant-garde artist Henri Matisse. He nicknamed aging color consultant Natalie Kalmus Nuisance.
He would much more trust the cameraman than he would an outsider like Natalie Kalmus, who I think he was pretty strict with and threw off the set at one point because he felt they knew better than she did.
Jack Cardiff, who cut his teeth shooting Technicolor travelogues, had a renegade spirit that complemented Powell's surreal style. A Matter of Life and Death was a wartime morality tale with a heaven depicted in black and white, the earth in glorious Technicolor.
When you start for Technicolor up there,
it is actually a character in the movie Technicolor, and particularly in A Matter of Life and Death, I think. It becomes a character in the film.
I had a silly idea, if you like, that when they're playing this game of table tennis, and it's a bizarre kind of magic atmosphere, I said to Michael, supposing instead of using the real-looking amber kind of sun, I used a lemon sun to make it sort of slightly weird. I'd do it and immediately, never questioned it.
They called it the Enchanted Cottage because it was so big. But the things they did with it, in A Matter of Life and Death, for example, all those incredible shots of the ceiling of the hospital as David Niven is being wheeled in, the way they moved that camera around when it was so big is amazing.
For actors, Technicolor always presented challenges. In this scene, Kim Hunter gets David Niven back when the spirits see she's willing to ascend the stairway to heaven so her lover may live.
In order to get that shot, he had to light it in such a way that as I was running down the stairs to David, the lights were so bright. There was at one point I couldn't see the stairs at all, and I missed the last 10 or 15 of them. Went absolutely flat out on the floor.
The Black Narcissus tells the story of nuns trying to establish a convent in India. Jack Cardiff created his vision entirely on a soundstage in England. He wrote, "To enhance the dreamlight strangeness and sensuous beauty, I exaggerated my effects. In the dawn sequence where Sister Ruth goes mad, I used soft greens in the shadows because the juxtaposition of green and red is suggestive of tragedy, like in Van Gogh's The Night Cafe." For years, people wondered why a Technicolor film made in England had a softer, richer look to those made in Hollywood.
Everybody figured out that it's just that English skies are always covered with fog and rain, and so the light is diffused, and it was simple diffusion of light, which all cameramen, of course, now use. But it was really the atmosphere in England that was creating this different look to the colors.
For the ballet sequence in the red shoes, Jack Cardiff invented a device which could change camera speeds in the middle of a shot, allowing a magical sense of weightlessness. Natalie Kalmus called The Red Shoes the best color film she'd ever seen. 7,000 miles away, her ex-husband and Technicolor founder felt the same way. Natalie Kalmus received more credits than perhaps anyone in film history. And it is her name that is most identified with Technicolor.
In fact, when my mother said that she was going to go out on a date with Dr. Kalmus of Technicolor, I just assumed his name was Natalie. I thought he was Dr. Natalie Kalmus.
Divorced since 1921, Natalie spent 30 years appealing, demanding a bigger piece of the Technicolor pie. In the formative years of the company, Natalie Kalmus contributed mightily to the aesthetic use of color, holding her own in a male-dominated world. But by the late 30s, art directors found her taste old-fashioned and manner inflexible. Although her credit appeared on virtually all Technicolor films until 1948, her dictates went unheeded. Natalie Kalmus was 87 when she died in 1965. In 1949, the doctor finally found personal happiness when he married journalist Eleanor King, becoming stepfather to Cammy, who 10 years before had played Bonnie Blue Butler in Gone with the Wind. Also in 1949, Technicolor's virtual monopoly came to an end when Kodak introduced Eastman color film, a single-strip negative which made every camera capable of shooting in color. The Kodak film was simpler and cheaper, but in the beginning, some found the quality of color inferior.
Every color that we put on lips came out sort of a liver color. We got to be known as liver lips. So I got 30 different shades of red lipstick, and I put them on my arm like this, stripes, and held it in front of the camera. All came out brown.
The first time Arlene Dahl saw herself in Eastman color, she wasn't pleased.
I was spoiled. I was used to Technicolor. The producer felt the same way, so he took it to the Technicolor labs to redo the Eastman color and fix it in the Technicolor labs.
Well, you loaned yourself to me to make love, but you didn't really need me. You're afraid to be in love my way.
The era of glorious Technicolor came to an end with Foxfire, the tale of a New York socialite falling for an Arizona Indian. It was the last American film to employ the mighty 3-strip camera. Once perfected, single-strip film became the industry standard. Technicolor adapted its dye transfer system of color separation to make prints from the new Eastman negative. Technicolor remained a leading processor of motion pictures. The competition posed by television forced the movie industry to invent new ways to maintain its audience. Because television was black and white, the push for all-color films seemed a smart move. But theaters across America continued to shut down. In 1960, Dr. Kalmus sold Technicolor to ballpoint pen magnate Pat Frawley, who promptly diversified the company beyond film processing.
Then Dr. Kalmus told me one day, even after that, he came to my office and said he was sorry that he let it happen, that even at his age, he would like to have stayed on and contributed more.
Dr. Herbert Kalmus died on July 11, 1963, at the age of 81. 12 years later, Technicolor management phased out the dye transfer process he perfected, and some say has never been equaled. In 1981, director Martin Scorsese said, "Most of the prints made during the 1950s on the Eastman color process are already faded."
The chemical formula was so complicated that it would decay rather quickly, so that film's prints were fading within 5 years, the negative was fading within maybe 15 to 20 years, and fading badly, into oblivion.
In response to Scorsese, Eastman Kodak said it had the technology to prevent color film from fading, but Hollywood didn't see the value in paying for it. That attitude changed with the industry boom of the 90s, when thriving cable and home video markets made studio libraries and their preservation good business. Archivists couldn't help but notice that Technicolor prints showed little signs of age.
I'm astounded how anything can live since 1944 that went into a can and sat on a shelf and is perfect mint condition that is.
In 1994, Technicolor announced its plan to return to an updated version of the dye transfer process created by Dr. Kalmus. 4 years later, the company showcased the new process with fresh prints of a Technicolor classic.
If you believe in quality, then I believe you have to go the way of film. And there's nothing in the digital world, there's nothing on the horizon that will come close to this process or even a film process.
We still can see like Snow White, Gone with the Wind, Becky Sharp, Red Shoes, thanks because they were done in Technicolor. Because Technicolor is the only system that doesn't fade.
principal. You little zipper neck.